The Olympic Games are here and it's Tilly's time once again, charging headfirst into another major tournament with the elusive prize of something tangible on offer to finally do justice to this incredible generation of Matildas. Only 12 teams at the Olympics, so the competition will be fierce, but an equally brutal qualifying process taking care of the European champions and World Cup finalists England, Sweden and the Netherlands is encouraging and leaves the door tantalisingly ajar. We'll take you through the latest news out of the Australian camp and the team's journey through the last 12 months, almost to the day since the start of the groundbreaking Women's World Cup. We'll dissect each of our Group B opponents and some of the other tournament favourites on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast, supported by Deploy Football. My name is Lachlan Avil, and joining me today is Poletti. We have some big transfer news to announce. Poletti, we've got you on a deal from Team Sleep for the duration of the Olympics competition. We're very excited. You're going to be up in the middle of the night, just like us, watching the Matildas. It's going to be fun.
That's the plan. I'm hoping that my body holds out that I pass the medical to allow this transfer to go through. That's right. Bree Edwards to Sydney FC and Jamie McLaren to Mahan Bagan aren't the only big transfers in Australian football this week. And I'm very much happy to be on that list.
Sorry, I've just seen on social media.
Of course,
Fabrizio Romano just posted. He said Poletti's the transfers failed, so that's not going to go through.
Oh no!
It was taken from the source. The transfer is on shaky legs, but I'm hopeful to see it over the line.
All right, sorry.
The question now becomes which Matildas game will Poletti fall asleep in the middle of?
Yes,
that's the question.
All right. That is the question. And of course, as you've already heard, Christian Montegan is joining me as well. No stranger to the middle of the night. The tennis, the Euros, you're very normal to it all, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I sleep in for one game, honestly. It's been, so many late nights watching all these different tournaments. But no, definitely keen for the Matildas to get their campaign underway.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fascinating tournament. There's so much expectation on their shoulders. And of course, it really does feel like a culmination of this journey over the last 12 months that they've taken since the Women's World Cup. A fourth place finish. Of course, there's no medals for second and third. Oh, sorry, there is for second, but there's no bronze medals in the Women's World Cup. There is at the Olympics. A couple of the big ticket teams, as we've said, are not here, so it feels like the chance is right there for taking. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but they have a good draw as well, the Tillies. So the chances are there. It's just about whether they take them or not. Poletti, since the conclusion of that tournament, there's been a big evolution in the way that Tony Gustafsson has at least tried to ask his team to play. He talks about being brave a lot, playing the ball out from the back, less hoofball, pumping it forward. That island game, so many frustrations from people watching because it was just long ball after long ball to no effect, right? Instead, the Matildas are being much more patient on the ball, trying to break teams down. It's worked sporadically over the course of the Asian qualifiers and some friendly matches. It hasn't been consistent. But again, we haven't had the ability to test that against high-quality opposition too often when they're going to be likely to come at us more. So I guess my question to you is, are they there yet? Is this evolution complete? And are they ready to finally claim a medal?
I think they are. I think that...
They're very convincing.
I think that if the Matildas in this current iteration of the squad are going to win a medal, or win something resembling silverware, that this is the tournament they're going to do it at. I think just the amount of big obstacles that are already out of their way by virtue of the fact they didn't qualify for the tournament, the fact that the USA are in a transitional sort of phase in their program, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the Americans later. I just think that everything might just set itself up for the Matildas to go on a dream run if they can get the right draw. There is no Sam Kerr, but we haven't had Sam Kerr for almost 12 months at this point. So Oh, actually, no. What am I talking about? Almost 12 months. She played in the Olympic qualifiers in the back end of last year in Perth. But Sam Kerr's absence still absolutely felt within this side, but it has allowed Michelle Heyman to come in and sort of cement her spot in the starting side as a striker. I think as long as everything works out for the Matildas, then a medal is certainly on the cards.
I want to talk about Sam Kerr a little bit because I feel like she's almost this mythological figure in Australian football right now, where on one hand, she's been gone throughout the World Cup and now the Olympics. So we've been talking about the whole team much more than we have about Sam Kerr. But there's also a very vocal portion of people who talk about the Matildas complaining every time she gets mentioned because, the squad's not just about Sam Kerr, it's about the Matildas. And Christian, I'm somewhere in the middle. She's a massive player. She's a very good player, and we would love to have her at this tournament, but she's not here. But because she hasn't been here for a little while, she forgets to be mentioned sometimes. But she's such a good player, and to miss her for the Olympic Games is a really big blow.
I think we always try and look on the side of, okay, we don't have Sam Kerr, but the team's more than just Sam Kerr. We've got so many quality individuals. We still play well as a collective, but I just can't help but think back to that goal in the semi-final of the World Cup last year, where she just provides that X
How
factor.
good.
And whether you like it or not, she is the focal point. And she's going to be missing this Olympics. You mentioned before, Michelle Heyman is now sort of tasked with the responsibility of leading the line. And I just worry. Poletti mentioned if all goes well, Australia can win a medal. Yeah, that's the key. If all goes well, like Australia just happens to suffer these injuries at the worst possible moments, and I just worry a bit about the lack of depth in the squad if we do pick up a couple of injuries here and there, especially in the attacking third. We saw Caitlin Ford with the ice pack on her leg. She should be okay for to start and commence the tournament, but that's an example where if we lose a player like her, then who else do we turn to score the goals? Because Michelle Heyman, for as good of a season as she's had with Canberra and the few games during those qualifiers that she scored those few goals, she hasn't really been tested against the elite, and that's another disadvantage coming in. Where we have played Canada a few times, but besides that, we haven't really sort of tested ourselves. Besides the World Cup over a year ago now, so. Sam Kerr, massive loss. But at the same time, during the back end of that group stage where we beat Canada 4-0, that game against France, I know Kerr came on towards the end, but that sort of gives you a bit of hope that, you know, we can still perform without her, and we've got to just take that positive into the tournament.
Yeah, so obviously there are those kind of things working against the Matildas. I will say just on Catley, Ford, and Tegan Micah, who were all doubts for the warm-up game against Canada, I don't think we've heard anything official out of the camp, but I've been looking through some of the training videos and the training photos. They've all been present doing gym sessions at the very least, and Ford and Catley were definitely out on the pitch as well. So it appears, at least on face value, that they will be fit enough for the tournament. Of course, every team is going to have to deal with these 18-player squads, so depth is going to be an issue no matter who you are, and injuries are really, really going to hurt because you're not going to have all the options that you usually are. But there are some good things working in the Matildas' favour, and that is the draw. And you look at the draw they have in Group B, you got USA and Germany, traditionally two powerhouses of women's football, and you can say that's pretty rough. But you look at what could have been, and I'm going to argue it's the best possible draw. The best possible. Because if you look at the other choices, you've got France, who are in Group A, who are a solid international European team playing on home soil. Pardon me. Then you have Spain, the World Cup champions, clearly the best team in the world. If you play them 10 times, they're going to beat you at least 9, right? So someone can beat them on any given day, but definitely one of the best teams in the world. And the USA and Germany, by nature of the draw, had to come as a package deal. Just because the different confederations moving around in the pots, they were always going to be drawn together. So we get to miss, I'd argue, the two best teams in the tournament in France and Spain, but we get the USA and Germany, who are two kind of lower tier teams. So the idea that it's probably harder to, because we've got two really good teams we've got to play against, but I think it's easier for us to top the group. And it's going to be a really good chance to giving us a guaranteed top 2 finish which is extremely important because of the way a 12-team tournament works. And this is part 2 of my argument here. Group B, the fact that we're in Group B, the letter that's on the top, regardless of the teams that are in it, is a really good thing because first and second place in Group B goes to the lower end of the bracket with the other 2 runners up from the different pools. Whereas the winners of Group A and C, so potentially France and Spain, both go to the top side. So in Group B, first and second really doesn't matter that much. We're going to get a runners up either way we finish. So you just get top 2 against the Germany and the USA, go through the lower half of the draw, and then it's potentially Spain or France in the final. So Poletti, I think the Matildas got really lucky. I think they have the squad to do it, and I really do think a medal is on the cards.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I like not to sound so dismissive, but I can actually see that. And I think just with where both USA and Germany are, like Germany are coming off the back of a Women's World Cup, but they're disappointed. And I know Christian's going to talk a little bit more about them later. And I know I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Americans later, as I've already mentioned, in a transitional sort of stage of their program. So I think there's that chance for the Matildas to finish top. 2 wins should probably do it. 1 win, 2 draws might see them slip down into second. But as you said, it doesn't really matter unless you sort of want to start trying to play games where you essentially move into like the try to pick your opponent stage, where you just try to thread the line so finely that you get to finish where you want to finish based on where you think everyone else is going to finish in terms of the placings, but that starts to get incredibly complex. So yeah, medal definitely a possibility.
Christian, we talked about Sam Kerr. Obviously, she's the biggest player when she's in the team. But now that she's out, who are the key players for the Matildas going into this tournament? Obviously, you've got Michelle Haymans, who's having to step up into that striker position and will probably be relied upon a lot to score the goals. You've got Mary Fowler, who's been played at wide and through the middle, which is definitely my preference, having forward out on the left as well. She can be, that player with the X factor that just provides the moments that matter in big games and big tournaments. You've got Claire Hunt, who's an absolutely class player at the back and sets the tempo of the game. And you got, Katrina Gorry and Kyra Cooney-Cross, their partnership in midfield as well. They've worked together so well now since developing that partnership. Who do you see as the standouts that will really make the difference for the Tillies?
I think Mary Fowler definitely has to be one of them in terms of the X factor. Not having Sam Kerr there, I think she can, sort of again be the X factor to provide that service to Michelle Heyman, who, she doesn't have the pace or, she can't get around a 36 like she used to in the younger years. But, if you have a player like that in Fowler playing in behind someone with that experience, I think that can be a really lead combination, once the tournament progresses and they start to understand each other more, as the Olympics progress. And in terms of partnership, I'd probably pick that left-hand side of Ford and Steph Catley, because I think if one of them goes down, hurt, for example, hopefully it doesn't happen, but, if they can't play for whatever reason, I think that would be a big blow because of, their partnership, obviously with Arsenal. They understand each other extremely well. We've seen in past interviews how, they've admitted, we understand each other's game styles, each other's runs. We don't have to think twice about it. So, I think that left-hand side is going to be really critical to, tear teams apart. But at the same time, we still can't be too predictable in that sense. We've got to try and, switch the ball, find different options, and players like Mary Fowler and, Kyra Cooney-Cross, Katrina Gore in the middle of the park, they're all going to be extremely, fundamental elements for, Tony Gustafsson to try and make a real run out of this.
Poletti, who's your pick?
I think Caitlin Torpey is going to be key. I think her as long as she's fit. I know she did have that lower leg injury. As long as she's fit, I think that her versatility is going to prove to be way too key for this side and how it's performing, particularly if other people, get some sort of soreness issues or, things like that. As we know that, the Matildas haven't exactly had the best of luck with injuries in the last 12 months. So I think Courtney Vine as well. I think her flexibility to play out wide on the wing, but also to play centrally as a striker. And we saw Tony work with that in the 2 match series against China a little bit. Because the reality is the likes of a Hayley Raso isn't going to be able to play every minute. The likes of a Caitlin Ford isn't going to be able to play every minute. And we certainly know that Michelle Heyman is not going to be able to play every minute. So I think Courtney's versatility in that front three will prove to be key as well. And so I think those are going to be the 2 key players for mine.
Yeah, you make a good point. Extremely condensed schedule they play. I'm just looking up on my calendar. It's the 3 group games are within 7 days, right? 7 days, Friday to Thursday. So extremely tight. And, with so limited players available, rotation is going to be key. And it's going to be a very interesting point to look out for going into the tournament. But for me, look, I see it. This is the plan. You get first or second in the group. Doesn't really matter which one. You beat a runners-up in the quarterfinals, and then you just got to win one of your next 2 games for a medal, either the semi or the bronze playoff. And I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to get there. But Christian, you never know in these major tournaments. Things always seem to surprise us at the weirdest moments.
I mean, yes, we have talked about, so-called the easiest side of the bracket. But we can draw a team like Japan, for example, if they do come runners up, and we know their history with them, they're not an easy opposition to face. And I just don't see the Matildas winning a medal. I know, the draw does favour us, but on paper, I just see at least 4 teams there that it's just sort of a class above the Matildas, unfortunately. Yes, anything can happen. It's tournament football. After the first couple of games, I think we'll get more of a sense of how this Matildas side, are going to adapt, to the conditions and the teams, the styles, and what have you. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the medal, it's not coming home again in this tournament.
Home? When was Australia ever home to football?
You know what I mean? Come on. We needed to come home. We've been waiting for a medal since forever. I mean, come on.
All right. Well, it's going to be a fascinating tournament.
Poletti, we've been talking for ages about getting this 5-a-side team for Roundball FC, starting our footballing empire. We want to do it soon. How can we get started?
Well, I think that we need to partner with Deploy Football. They're one of only 2 Australian brands to ever receive a FIFA Quality Pro license for its equipment, and they're proudly Australian owned and operated since 2012.
Seems like a no-brainer. And they offer clubs access to the best value for money for their footballs, teamwear, and their equipment. We'd be mad not to line up with Deploy.
Yeah, and with a quick 15-day turnaround, we could be up and ready by Unite round to get this 5-a-side crew going.
Sounds like the start of a footballing empire. They partner with all of the associations from Football New South Wales to Football West so we can take on anywhere in Australia after we succeed at Unite round. How are we going to get this started?
Well, I reckon that we need to head to deployfootball.com and take advantage of their bulk pricing. I don't know about you, but given how rusty I am, I reckon I'm probably going to sky a couple of balls. So I think we might need to make sure that we've got plenty ready to go.
Lock it in, Deploy Football.
Of course, the Matildas are the most popular national team in the country. I think that is beyond doubt by this point. But what is not so popular is getting up at 3 a.m. to watch them. Screws the sleep schedule just a little bit.
Can confirm.
Yes, it's not so fun. So to try and counter this and to ensure the next generation of footballers don't miss out on another inspiring tournament with the Matildas, Football Australia have partnered with creative company Ogilvy to produce a new podcast series for the Olympic Games, an AI-powered podcast series. Now, this is aimed at kids between 5 and 12 years old. The story of each match throughout the tournament will be written live as the game is being played out into the style of a children's book and then run through an AI engine to be narrated artificially by Steph Catley and then released a few hours after each match, hopefully by the time that their target audience is awake. This is splitting opinions, it's fair to be said. I think on the surface it's a great engagement tool. I'm sure kids will absolutely love it. The target audience of 12-year-olds and under won't be able to tell it's AI. They have released a little trailer. It's up on Spotify and YouTube right now. It's a very natural voice. You won't be able to tell if you didn't know it wasn't there. Steph Catley sounds very professional in the way she's reading these words, but you can tell it's her voice. Just Poletti, it's an interesting one. It's not a real human. It feels a little bit weird, but I'm sure the kids that it's targeted for will absolutely love it.
Look, I love the idea behind it, and I think from an idea standpoint, it's good. From an execution standpoint, I don't know. It gives me the ick. All right, like I really can't think of a better way to describe it. It really gives me the ick. Surely there's got to be I'm not gonna pretend like I'm up on my kids' entertainers, but the Wiggles or something, right? Surely you could get the Wiggles into a studio, read off a script. We've got pretty clear-cut technology now that we're recording this call with it. Allows high-powered local recording. It's a lot better than Zoom. The audio quality is incredibly clear. Something like that where they don't even have to go into a studio to record it, read off a script, get it uploaded. I don't know. Like I said, it's just giving me the ick, and I don't like it.
Well, as someone who has thorough experience with turning around podcasts on a tight timeline, I can tell you that it would take a decent amount of time to turn these around if you're doing it manually, because you're going to have to get the script sorted, which probably won't be finalised until at least 20 minutes after the game, you'd think. Then you got to get someone in a studio, go through it, reread it, do some cuts, then you got to edit it all together. That's, the games are finishing at around 5 a.m. You're probably not getting it out to 8:30, 9 a.m. on a really good day if you do everything right the first time around. So obviously the advantage of AI is that you're going to be able to do this a lot quickly. As soon as someone's finalised the script, it could legitimately be a matter of minutes before this AI has turned around this podcast, and then you can upload it. So when kids are waking up, you can put it on in the car ride to school the next morning. So it's the efficiency there, Christian, that's helpful. But maybe this is opening up a brand new market for us. Maybe we need to get some voice samples from Craig Goodwin, Nestori Irankunda, Harry Suter, and get them to overlay onto our podcast.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? But it just seems a bit weird, doesn't it? Like, it's not human. Like, we're speaking about AI, I just find the whole thing, like, all this advancement in technology, like, if they able to release at 8:39 to, align with the sort of school hours, dropping the kids off, listening to, I think it would work really well. If they can, get that sorted, hopefully it's not, too much drama there. But yeah, I find it a little bit weird. I don't know about you, but nah, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. And Poletti, at this point in time, I do plan on watching all the games live. But if there is a morning where I happen to have like an early start or something, I want to sleep in, I think I'm going to try not watching the game, and I'm going to listen to one of these stories just to see what the experience is like.
You can go for it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm joining you.
I think you're torturing yourself.
Is that if my transfer from Team Sleep falls through, I think that I will just find a way to load up the mini match, and just take that in.
All right, then let's take a look at the Matildas group opponents in Group B of this tournament, and of course, Poletti, they're headlined by the United States of America under a new management.
Yeah, so it will be their first tournament under new manager Emma Hayes. Very much a transitional squad as the Americans look to move on from the past and move ahead into the future of the program. And that's reflected in the fact that Alex Morgan was not selected for this tournament. They failed to top their group, which, topping the group was supposed to set them up for a primetime kickoff, which was 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time here in Australia. And I know because I was at that game watching the Netherlands play South Africa instead of watching the Americans play South Africa. They should make the knockouts, so thinking maybe third in the group. But if you were to tell me that, the Americans are going to go 3 from 3 and they're going to top the group, I wouldn't be surprised. If you tell me they're going to go 1 from 3 and finish in third, I wouldn't be surprised. And one thing I did want to point out as it related to the Americans is Corbin Albert. So for those who aren't aware, she's a midfielder. She's 20 years old. She plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France. This is her first Olympic squad. She's only just come into the side in the last 12 months. But earlier this year, there's some controversy around her views of trans people. She was found to have shared anti-LGBTQIA content on TikTok, including a sermon given in a Christian worship space, talking about how being gay and feeling transgender is wrong, and that's from The Athletic. There was also another post that no longer appears on her profile. Shows her family taking turns stating that their pronouns are USA. Also liked an Instagram post mocking the injury to Megan Rapinoe in her final game. She did issue an apology for this. There is questions from a lot of people on social media of how much of the apology was genuine. Was it forced? Did she mean it? Every time that the US social accounts put posts up involving her, it gets a lot of negative attention as it relates to the national team.
Is she part of the squad?
She is part of the squad. I don't know if it's worth it to have her in the squad. You could look at the likes of a Savannah DeMello, Andy Sullivan, both of whom were part of the Women's World Cup squad in 2023. I know Christy Mewis was injured, but I'm not sure where she's at in her recovery from her injury. But if she was fit, that she could have been an option as well. I don't know if all the controversy that she's bringing with her, maybe not controversy, if the baggage that she's bringing with her is going to be worth it, because we know that players say, we don't read socials, we don't, read the articles, but we know they do, right? It's just part and parcel. We know they read all of this stuff. How much of a distraction is this actually going to be for an American side that's already in transition and sort of has their backs up against the wall when it comes to actually performing at this tournament?
I guess you're right, Poletti. This USA team, they got ahead in women's football because they invested in their game earlier. It's a similar story to Australia, just on a much bigger level. They dominated, the 20th century really, in terms of women's football, and then they've come to this point where Europe is now catching up and overtaking them, and they've lost their identity a little bit as this global powerhouse, and they have to reset. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. Of course, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There is a margin for error in this group, which they'll enjoy. First and second place is essentially the same thing in Group B, which is nice to have. And Christian, it'll be a feeling that's also felt for Germany as well as they look to crack into the top two.
Yeah, definitely. Although we remember last year's Women's World Cup, Germany didn't have the best campaign, did they? Got knocked out of the group stage. It was their first and only time they either got eliminated from the group stage, which is an absolute shock. In the group consisting of South Korea, Colombia, and Morocco, and to not finish in those top two places was seen as a massive shock. And the system has sort of changed a bit. They've changed coaching now, coaching personnel. Obviously, if you look at the top players, Alexandra Pop, by far, you'd probably argue the most influential and important player in that squad. She's experienced, 33 years of age, captain of the national side for about 5 years now, third-time all-time goal scorer. And she's a real focal point who can hold the ball up, bring others into play, known as a classic poacher centre forward who knows when to be at the right place at the right time and has that incredible aerial ability. So from a Matilda's perspective, that's obviously the main play that they've got to keep an eye out to try and contain as much as possible. And then I've outlined just a couple of other plays for the Matildas to keep an eye out, one being Jules Brand, because of her flexibility and her versatility. I guess, she's on the squad list. She's named as a midfielder, but she can basically play in all three positions. Out on the right, whether right mid, right wing, or fullback, she's been experimenting in all three positions. So for the Matildas to try and neutralise that and to try and analyse and work that out, that's going to be very difficult for Tony Gustafsson to try and figure that one out. And also Shola up front. With Pop, she's been experimented sometimes as sort of a second striker, not so much as number 10 to accommodate for Shola, who I guess is going to be another focal point in terms of the goal-scoring threat for Germany. And they'll have a point to prove, at this Olympics, obviously, like I said, coming off that disappointing campaign last year. Along with the USA, they've always been there or thereabouts, on the world stage, competing for, gold medals, World Cups. They're a big nation, just like the men's side. So they're still going to have a lot of expectation. The last World Cup aside, I think the Matildas are going to have their work cut out from a bit if they're not on their game.
And of course, the team that kind of sticks out as the likely fourth place finisher. Of course, you never know in these tournaments, Christian. But Zambia only Tokyo was their first Olympic Games. This is now their second, trying to cause some kind of upset and get through to the knockouts, and third potentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, last Olympic campaign, like you mentioned, Tokyo, it was a pretty, you could say, mixed bag of results. They lost 10-3 to Holland, drew 4 to China, and then lost 1-0 to Brazil. So make of that what you will. So yeah, a bit inconsistent on that front. They do leak a lot of goals, but when they go forward, they're so threatening and potent on the counter attack. They've got so much pace to burn. That's going to be their real main threat, really. Their tactics going to be okay. Opposition can have as much of the ball as they want, pass it around, but once we get the ball, we're going to try and hit on the counter with as much pace as possible. And we saw at the World Cup last year, they'll place in a tough group with Japan and Spain, lost 5-0 in both of those games respectively. But in terms of an attacking sense, they're not going to have many opportunities up front against the likes of Australia, USA, and Germany. A standout player. Obviously Barbara Banda, she is absolute freak, only 24 years of age. I'm sure a lot of people by now know who she is, but again, a player with a lot of pace. She's going to have a lot of chances in front of goal when she does get those chances, because like I said before, it's in terms of the team providing her that service, that's going to be a completely different question. So yeah, from that front, from Matilda's perspective, if they can switch on when they don't have the ball, I think that's going to be the only real concern. But I mean, other than that, you're right. Like you'd expect the Zambia to come last in the group.
All right, let's head over to Group A. So we're now going to the opposite side of the draw. So from Matilda's perspective, we're really worried about the group winners in this scenario because the second places will come through. We'll get them in the early stages. But if the medal is the aim, it's the group winners of these two groups that we've got to be worried about. And for me, you look at Group A, you got the hosts, you got France. For me, they're the big ticket team in this group, and there are a couple others that definitely could cause surprises. But on home soil, they're the ones to look out for. They've played 15 games since the World Cup. All but one of those is competitive. I think that's a big line to draw specifically to Australia and the Asian teams. They don't get to play high quality football as much as the Europeans do. The only losses in that period of 14 competitive games were to Spain and England. So you got the two World Cup finalists. They also did beat England in that span of games as well. They did have a loss to Ireland last Wednesday, but that was a heavily rotated team that had to be done so close to the start of the Olympics. In terms of players, it's a very familiar team to what we saw against Australia at the Women's World Cup last year. Wendy Renard, absolute rock at the back. The other player I've highlighted here to look out for is Kadi Diani. She scored 93 goals in just 113 games in the French First Division, which is an exceptional goal-scoring record. 29-year-old plays out on the wing. She's going to be extremely dangerous and is going to cause lots of headaches for Steph Catley, I'm sure. They're, of course, coached by Hervé Renard, who as well we're familiar with now, used to coach the Saudi Arabian men's team, made his move to the French women's team. So, look, a familiar team. We obviously, like that famous game in the quarterfinals of the World Cup last year, the penalty shootout that went down to Courtney Vine. We saw they're a quality team, but one that we did have the measure of on home soil. I just think when those roles are reversed, Poletti, I think the French might just have the edge.
No, I mean, I might be pretty scarred looking at Courtney Vine coming down the wing. Like just the mere presence of Courtney Vine might be enough to scar the French.
You reckon she gets a start just for that game, for the mental battle?
Sure, why not?
I love it. So the other teams in this group, we have Canada, who are probably sad they didn't draw the Matildas directly in the group stage because they beat them 3 times in the past 12 months. Their only losses since the World Cup have been to the US twice on penalties, which is brutal, and then a friendly loss to Brazil as well. So they're coming in very good form. Colombia is all about Linda Caicedo. I'm sure everyone knows her name by now. She absolutely lit up the World Cup last year at 18 years of age. She's only 19 now. Scored that absolute worldie of a goal against Germany. She cuts inside, so good with her feet. Loves to get isolated out on the left wing and take plays on. She's so exciting. a player that I've had the privilege of seeing live as well in Melbourne in the World Cup. Just the way the crowd got behind her was insane. So she's definitely the one to look out for Colombia. And then, of course, New Zealand round out Group A as well. So a lot of A-League women's fans will be familiar with some of these names. You got Rebecca Stott from Melbourne City, Mackenzie Barry, Macy Fraser, Grace Jarley. No Hannah Wilkinson, though. She did not make the cuts. One of their best all-time goal scorers will not be participating in this tournament. And then you have Annalie Luongo who was travelling as a reserve. The story for New Zealand is a pretty similar one to the men's, to be honest with you. It's go and play Oceania and dominate those games, but then when you step into that international sphere, Christian, they're the ones being dominated. So I really don't give New Zealand a whole lot of hope. They have not done well playing at the high quality of international football. I think it's really between Canada and Colombia for that guaranteed second spot.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lockie. It's a disadvantage really when you come up in that Oceania group, when you try and qualify, when you don't get that quality opposition under your belt, just to sort of breathe a bit of that experience. What you're going to get for the Olympics. So obviously, I have to make do. I do see them getting dominated for probably the majority of it. Obviously, they caused the upset. Last World Cup. I believe it was, off the top of my head, I've forgotten the opening game.
Norway,
that's right. Believe they won 1-0. So, I mean, they're capable of a shock, but I just don't see them, keeping that consistency, I guess, for the whole group stage. So, yeah, I see them missing out, unfortunately, for them.
All right, then let's tick off our final group, Poletti, with the world champions.
Yeah, so Spain, probably the favourites in this group. The winners of the 2023 World Cup. They've only lost 3 matches since the start of the World Cup. So 18 wins, no draws, 3 losses. That's absolutely a remarkable 21-game run with only 3 losses in it and 18 wins. That is absolutely insane. The bulk of their squad played in the Women's World Cup. It is their first Olympics tournament, though. So maybe the congested nature of the Olympics tournament works against them because they won't have the experience of having been here before. Having world-class talent will definitely help offset that, but, it's matches every 2 to 3 days. It's a very hard, fast, quick schedule. The entire thing's over in 2 weeks. It's a lot of football to be playing even with world-class players, and if you don't know how to handle it, then you might find themselves struggling a little bit. Then you've got Brazil. They failed to get out of the group at the Women's World Cup. They've gone 10 wins, 2 draws, 3 losses since. Key wins over Japan and Canada, but also a draw and a loss to both those sides. And Colombia as well in terms of the wins. I don't know. I think they failed to get out of the group of the World Cup. I think they're going to do the same here. I think I spoke earlier about the Americans looking at putting their focus towards 2027. I think we're very much going to see something similar from Brazil here. I think they'll give it a red hot crack. Looking at the likes of a Japan, they topped their group at the Women's World Cup. They beat North Korea 2-1 on aggregate to qualify. They come into the tournament undefeated in the last 4 games, 2 wins against New Zealand, 1 against Ghana, and then a draw versus Colombia. They finished 3rd in the group in 2020 on home soil, lost to Sweden 3-1 in the quarterfinals at the 2021 Olympics. So I think if I were to look at this group, I think I would say that Japan have a very good chance of getting out. They're a much improved side from the ones that played at the Tokyo Olympics. And then you got Nigeria as well. They defeated Australia at the World Cup before losing to England in the round of 16. So they left the tournament with just the 1 victory. It was that game against Australia in Brisbane, that 3-2 game. It's their first Olympics since 2008. Now, this is a side that does incredibly well on the continental stage in Africa, but just seems to not take that step up in continental competition. But look, we saw that they beat Australia at the World Cup. As I said, it was a very good game played by Nigeria. They got through to the round of 16. So it's not like they're a bad side. I just think that with how stacked, the Olympics are, I think that I think Group C is only going to have two sides come out of it, and I very much think it's going to be Spain and Japan.
All right, there you go. There are all 12 of the teams competing at the Olympic Games Women's Football Tournament. Christian, Poletti, do we have any brave predictions before we sign off here tonight? Christian, go to you first.
Brave predictions. I think Spain are going to win it again. That's not brave. I'm trying to think of an upset. Probably USA not to make it to the knockouts will probably be my brave call. Although, they're playing Zambia.
That is very brave. That is very brave.
That fits the bill.
Because they're playing Zambia, they might get their goal difference up enough, which might... that's the only thing that might derail that tip, but I'll go with that one. Just to put my neck out on the line.
All right, nice, Poletti.
My brave prediction is... Okay, I'll give you the three teams that I think are going to win a medal. I think that's a brave enough prediction.
Okay, wow.
Okay, so I think Canada are going to get a medal. I think that Spain will get a medal, and I think that the Matildas will get a medal.
Wow. Okay.
I think the Tillies can do it. I think
What
the
color,
Tillies can do it.
What color for the Matildas?
It's a medal. That's all I can say. I can't. I think they'll make the gold medal game. Okay. If you want me to stick my neck out and give a color, I will go as far as saying they will make the gold medal game.
Wow.
So it's gold.
No, I never said that. I said they'll make the gold medal game.
Fair enough. What's yours, Lockie?
Well, they say that bronze medals are better than silver medals, right? Because, you win the playoff game rather than getting to the final and losing, right?
True.
Bronze is better than silver.
True.
I think my bold prediction is that Spain won't win a medal.
That's fair.
It's going to be tricky. I think the very likely scenario is that they'll play France in a semi-final. And I just give the edge to France slightly because of the home factor. I really do think it's that important.
Yeah.
And then they have to go into a 3v4 playoff, and you never know how seriously these teams take those. All right, then, that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Thank you very much again to Deploy Football for supporting our coverage of the beautiful game gone to Paddy this week. We're very much looking forward to the tournament. We hope you are too. Christian Montegan, enjoy the sleepless nights.
Yeah, back on it again. I was watching Wimbledon for 2 weeks, and now we're back on the sleepless night. It's going to be a fun one.
And Poletti, I'm so glad we got to announce your transfer over from Team Sleep. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad to be away from Team Sleep, although don't be surprised if come 2:59 a.m. on Friday morning, I am off with the Pixies.
The transfer's shaky. It's falling down at the last moment. Oh, dear. Well, we will be back bright and early on Friday morning. You'll be able to wake up. If all goes to plan, you'll be able to wake up to your Matildas results in your Spotify, in your Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, wherever you're watching us, and to those results. We're going to do our best, get up bright and early and get that out for you. So we hope
and not with an AI voice.
Not with an AI voice. No, it's going to be all natural. No processing whatsoever. But thank you all very much for listening to today's episode of the podcast. We appreciate you as always. Goodbye for now.